Hey F3 Omaha, welcome back to Q-Source TV, where we explore the manual of virtuous leadership, or Q-Source. This week's prayer comes from Ephesians 5, verses 25 and 28. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. In this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. Happy wife, happy life. You've heard all the little cliches. I've definitely got to experience that. There's times when I really put my wife ahead of myself and really listen to the tenets of what is in Q-Source's chapter this week. And it truly is a happier life. Then there's other times where I falter or I act selfish or I'm just not thinking straight. And the outcome is a little differently, which I'm sure we can all relate to. Quick house cleaning item for this week. In case you're wondering, that is a Christmas tree in my office, and it's only the middle of October, mid to late October. It seems like every year, it used to be the rule was the day after Halloween or even Halloween night, we could start putting up a little bit of Christmas decorations. Well, those rules flew out the window. You know, happy wife, happy life. She wanted to decorate the whole room of Christmas. She's got stuff in our office here. So, hey, whatever makes her happy makes me happy. So we got the Christmas decor going up. As far as a couple other house cleaning items, we had to switch out the queue this week. Schnitzel will be on the queue at Crucible next week. So we'll have him on Q-Source TV next week. And unfortunately, the queue that stepped in and switched with him, our schedules just didn't align. I try to turn this show around once a week. So kind of a quick turnaround time to get the interview scheduled and do these videos and the intro and all that sort of thing. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the interview scheduled. I don't know a lot about this week's queue, but I'll tell you what I know. And then next week, hopefully we'll get Schnitzel on here and we'll be back to the old format of having the Q interview. So as far as the principal practice or philosophy, we're talking about quadrant 1.5, which is M.
Get back, witch!
I'm not a witch, I'm your wife.
The transformative relationship between a man and his wife. So much great content to take away from this chapter. I talked last week about the gesture and how there was so much in there that I needed to hear and I needed to read, and I had my highlighter going crazy. Not much different this week, and maybe that's just how it's going to be with Q-Source. There's so much great information in this book that my highlighter is just going to be working overdrive. But did want to highlight a few points that really stuck out to me on this chapter. The first one is the M is the hymn's transformative relationship, because it becomes through it, he becomes something new, legally, practically, and spiritually. If you're Christian or I'm not sure how other faiths do it, but when you're married, you become one with your wife, with God. All three of you kind of form together in that holy matrimony.
Marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today.
The legally, again, you have to get a marriage license, which I learned from a podcast recently, actually goes back to the civil rights movement. States used to not require marriage licenses, but pretty interesting. Do a little research there if you want to learn more about that. But the one that really stuck out to me of those three was practically, which makes a lot of sense that you go from becoming an I, you have a lot of I sentences, I did this, I did that, to a we, and everything has to involve your M. She's the most important relationship as the chapter gets into, but practically might actually, spiritually and legally are both important as well, but practically, as far as day-to-day operations of the household, really stuck out to me there. Number two, the hymn aims most of his arrows at the M, because if that fails, the rest of his relationships will fail as well. And this part of the chapter gets into the concentrica, and thinking of the concentrica as almost like a dartboard where you have the bullseye in the middle, which is your M relationship. And then as you draw the circles around that and the outer circles, that's where you have all of your other relationships in your life. But obviously the one right in the center is your relationship with your M. So I really like that line, and it's true. things were going a little rocky between me and my M, or whenever they are going rocky and things are going so well in other parts of my life, there is a bittersweetness to it. And it's not something, at least for me, that leaves my psyche. If things aren't going well at home for whatever reason, I could have all the success in the world when it comes to my fitness or other fellowship or even with my shorties. But if that relationship with my wife is in a rocky state, or we had a big fight or something like that, it's like a dark cloud over everything else. And I'm not fully, I don't find full joy, which I know the chapter gets into as well. I might feel happy in the moment, but that is fleeting. And the rockier the time is with my wife in that moment, the faster that fleeting sensation goes away. So definitely important to keep that relationship going well. Number 3, your wife is not your best friend. She is made for a much higher purpose. Best friend relationship is actually 2 more rings out on the hymn's concentrica. So like I said, if you think about it like a dartboard, the M is right in the middle, and this phrase, which I love how the chapter gets into, don't think of your wife as your best friend. She's much more important than any best friend you could ever have. So I thought that was really cool, because you hear that phrase a lot, where she's my best friend or he's my best friend, when it comes to spouses talking about each other. The last point, chapters, they always end in a banger. This wasn't the very last sentence, but it was right towards the end. Anybody can stay married on a full belly, but it is within the crucible of hunger where the true bond between man and wife is formed. And I didn't just pick that line because it has the word crucible in it, although that is pretty cool. But that is just a really sweet line. The crucible of hunger where the true bond between man and wife is formed. And this part of the chapter gets into when the going gets tough and when man becomes unhappy. That's when you really need to double down on your relationship with your M and really be more sacrificial towards her and really put her on a pedestal and do everything you can to make that relationship whole. And that's when you'll find true joy rather than just chasing happiness.
Hear this now. I will always come for you.
As far as a personal experience with my M and F3 Omaha, I think when I first started out, she definitely saw how I was a changed man just from getting up earlier than I had ever gotten up in my life consistently. And she really liked that. She was always an early bird. She always liked to work out before her workday got started. And she always encouraged me to do that as well. Some things that we laugh about, at least I laugh about them, I'm not sure how funny she thinks they are, is when she has told me something about some way that I should be living or something I should be doing. A great example is getting up early and getting the workday started with a workout. But then something I heard at a beat down or a cafeteria or maybe on a pre-run or what have you from one of my F3 brothers, I would bring home and I would say, hey, we should try doing this, or hey, I heard this about relationships, or hey, we should try this with our daughter, whatever. Then she would remind me, I told you that 6 weeks ago. I told you that several months ago. So I think she was appreciative that I'm finally learning through F3, but then part of her was probably feeling like, and I don't want to speak for her, but I imagine she was feeling something like, why did it take this group of men for you to just listen to what I've been telling you all along? So really goes back to what the chapter was saying. Make her the most important relationship and really make that bond with your wife one, so that you guys are acting together as you go through this life, the practically part where you're changed practically, and then everything will be a lot better. But I know when it comes to F3, she, like I said, she's very appreciative of how it's transformed me physically, in terms of just being in a better mood, being in a better place. Obviously, losing a lot of weight helps because I feel better about myself. But I think early on, she didn't know what to make of it. I know she was encouraging, but I think I just, sometimes you can dive too much into something. And I think it was on one of the Whetstone podcasts, Dread or Dark Helmet, maybe it was both of them, in Plague. We're talking about how if things aren't right at home, then you can't just go out and, start a charity or do something in your community, because you have to get your home life right before you can really accelerate your community and accelerate fellowship outside of what I learned to be is the concentrica and really those 2 center rings, which would be your M, and I imagine your shorties is the next chapter. So I imagine that's the next ring outside of your M. But it took me a while. I'm kind of hard-headed, slow to learn, but it took me a while to realize if things aren't going right at home, or if it's between something that could affect my home life and F3 or another hobby, then the home life has to come first. And I have to make sure that is right before I can go out and do that other thing, whether it's a volunteer deal through F3 or trying to post 6 days a week, even if it makes me, what does my daughter call me? Crankosaurus? No, it's something to that effect. Grouchosaurus? Anyways, it's something to that effect later in the week. So now I've kind of dialed back a little bit on how much I work out and really just putting the M first and that relationship first and making sure, okay, she's happy. Then what I've noticed is now she's not as, I don't want to say jealous or finicky when it comes to F3, but she doesn't question it anymore. She knows how good it is for me, and she's able to celebrate all the good things that are coming out of F3 for me because I'm not putting that ahead of our family. And she knows that I know that, and she's recognized the change even the last 3 months or so. And she realizes that, yes, it's something that's a very important part of my life, and I hope to have it for the rest of my life. But at the same time, I realize that nothing is more important than the family and our relationship between her and I, and obviously our family between her and I and our children as well. So I think she's appreciative of what F3 is, but I think it took my own transformation and my own realization of the concentrica and really how relationships should be working so that I could really enjoy everything F3 has to offer without worrying about the home life being affected. All right, let's get to this week's Q. His F3 name is Long Neck. He's the current second F and a former Site Q. His hospital name is Josh Harper, and he joined in August of 2022, so he's been around the block a while. He is a director of practice operations for Methodist Hospital here in Omaha, and he was born here, but he grew up in Bryan, Texas. His high school mascot were the Vikings, and he met his M at work. Back in the day, he used to work at Domino's, and she worked right next door at Subway. The way they met involved a lot of screaming and yelling on his part. It's too bad we didn't get to the interview this week with Long Neck. Love to hear that part of his story. In his free time, he loves to smoke meat, and he defines a leader as someone willing to step into your shoes to assist and show you the way. As far as a little bit of personal history with Long Neck, as I mentioned at the top, I don't know him that well, but he is the organizer of something we have here at F3 Omaha about once a month, which is a poker night. Great fellowship opportunity. He has all the chips. He has all the rules. He keeps the timer. He takes it very seriously in terms of facilitating that night and making sure that it's a great time for everybody. And I do like to play some poker. I learned a lot about poker during the pandemic, just kind of a serious hobby of mine. Sometimes I travel around and go to poker tournaments and definitely try and play in the big ones that come here locally. But that's how I know Long Neck mostly. And like I mentioned before, hopefully we can get an interview set up and we'll have a bonus episode of just the interview with me and Long Neck. All right, that's it for this week's episode. Sorry it was so short, and sorry you just had to look at my mug the whole time. But next week we will have Schnitzel. Hopefully he can make it on Q Source TV. And as far as the P next week, it is 1.6 Shorties, the sacrificial relationship between a man and his children. Looking forward to that chapter and looking forward to next week's episode. See you then.
Hello in there. Hey, what's so important? What you got here that's worth living for?